You know, what is there's an old saying that people say, uh, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the question then becomes the obvious question: what is power? Who has it? How do you get it? And who controls the power? Money is power. And and then they're on their stump speech with the it's the income inequality, and it's 1/10 of the world's population controls 99.9% of the wealth. When you're punching a clock, 40 hours a week, and then it's the same old names year after year, and it's follow the money, follow the money. Today it's ISIS, yesterday it was Al Qaeda, before that, Russians. If you woke up tomorrow and ISIS was gone, the government would be ready with another boogeyman to scare you. That's what they do. There has to be a boogeyman to justify, one more tank, one more plane, one more aircraft carrier that no one's asking for. The United States has more aircraft carriers than every other country in the world combined. Defense contractors and weapons manufacturers are spending millions on lobbying. You have to ask yourself, why? They're creating these wars. Without a war, the defense contractors would, what would they do? And you're still going to work, and you're making less today than you were yesterday. You don't know why. But, price of gas goes up. You freak out. Price of gas goes down. You freak out again. Thanks a lot, Obama. That's what you say. Gas is high. It's Obama's fault. Gas goes down. Must be an act of God. But you have to follow the money. You have to follow the money, people. You know, it's the IMF. You know, the International Monetary Fund. It's the World Bank. It's the Fed here in the United States. You know, you people get excited because you can buy a house 4% interest. You know, meanwhile, your money's earning zero. You think you're getting a deal. You know, it's these same kind of people it's the same type of mentality, same type of people. They get excited because they get a tax refund. Hello, you loaned the government money at 0% interest. All they're doing is paying you back the money that you lent them throughout the year. The money you lent them for free, you charge the government no interest. They're just giving you a refund on your money. That money is worth less when they give it back to you than it was when you gave it to them. You know, and then, here comes this guy, and his hair is sticking up, and he makes little or no sense. But he's telling you, we have to break up the banks. Hillary won't release the transcripts. Of course she's not. She's making $250,000 for a 30-minute speech, but she promises she's not telling them anything suspicious. Fox News is still drooling about Benghazi. Bernie Sanders is a maniac, but it's a revolution. Millions of people didn't put on any sunscreen. They're feeling the burn. And then Fox News, they've already labeled this guy as socialist. And here comes Rachel Maddow. No, he's a democratic socialist. What is that? I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the sort of the whole thing of it. You're mad about your health care. Bernie Sanders give it to you for free. You don't have to pay for your school either. Someone else will pay. It's no big deal. Well, who's that someone else that's going to pay? Well, don't ask that question. We'll tell you later. Meanwhile, 20,000 college kids who aren't going to vote are showing up at a Bernie Sanders rally for no reason. Because they think they'll be on CNN. I don't know. And, of course, it's almost entirely not real. They've already decided who the next president is going to be. As far as who they is, I've already told you. It's the Masons, the Bilderbergs, Illuminati, Opus Dei, Prior of Sion, the Vatican, these people here. And they had, this was decided long ago. But the news covers the election 24 hours a day, like it matters. People watch it and then get mad about it. You turn on the news just long enough to get pissed off, so you have something to post on Facebook. Anyway, I gotta go. They're here to get me.